Alright guys, welcome back. Time for another update. Making good progress now. Car's been painted, all the arches are finished, and the new gearbox has arrived. Here's my new Beckert Technology 6-speed sequential gearbox. So they've made the custom adapter plate there for me so it fits straight onto the Toyota bell housing. That's the original box there, just for reference, so how much longer it is. The new gearbox is slightly wider, but it's quite a bit shorter, and it's about 10 kilograms lighter as well. So that all bolts on nicely. There's 2 dowels on the inside of the plate into the gearbox, and about 11 or 12 bolts. 2 dowels and another dozen or so bolts then into the front of the bell housing. So then obviously input shaft comes through exactly where the Toyota one used to go through, so I can put the original bearing carrier on, that just bolts on, and can use all the standard Toyota setup, and the original fork obviously come through that hole at the back there, so that should all slot back together nicely. The only difference on this is a 1x23 Ford spline, and the nose is slightly bigger than the Toyota one, so I've got a new clutch on the way, a Helix paddle clutch competition thing. Basically a Toyota Altezza complete clutch, but they're putting a Ford spline on the centre of it for me, and obviously I'll need to try and find a new spigot bearing now to go in the end of the crank that's the same size as that, so hopefully it shouldn't be too much of an issue sorting that bearing out. And I've got the lever here, it's just sat in the car at the moment. Quite a nice thing. It's got a rose joint on the front there. So three different slots to adjust the throw of the lever depending how you want it. And that's the lever for the reverse lockout for the wire there that's on the top of the gearbox. So obviously that's the inner, and there's an outer sheath to cut to length and put on it there. So there's a linkage rod there. Obviously that will just weld onto the slot on there and weld it onto the gearbox, weld it onto the gear stick end once you've set the length and everything, and simple as that really. So that obviously forward and back moves the selector up and down, and that's that really. There's not much else to it. The only thing I haven't got yet is the potentiometer sensor for there, so I need to sort that out so I can get my flat shift up and running, and then we're good to go. Hopefully get this mounted in the car tomorrow, and then put this drive flange on the back, and then measure up for the new prop shaft and get that sorted. It comes with this little laser cut plate on the back there to weld onto a gearbox mount. I'm not really sure how we're going to do it yet, but it should be straightforward enough. So that's the gearbox. Hopefully we're going to get that mocked up in the car tomorrow, get the mounts done, and have a look at the tunnel. We're probably going to have to do some fabrication work on the top of the tunnel to get the linkage and everything fitted in tidy. But yeah, so the car was painted yesterday as well. We'll have a little walk around now and have a look at that. She's all nice and shiny. I'm really chuffed with the way it's come out. I was a bit worried that I had the wrong shade of paint because I couldn't remember what colour I had originally. But it's blended in quite nice. There's a little soft line there that just needs polishing into the roof, but it's quite a good match, so I'm quite chuffed. I've just started putting the back end back together this evening. Just started putting the bumpers and stuff on the front now. That's the next job tonight. I just wanted to show this as well. I've modified the strut brace, just put a cut in it, pulled it up a little bit, and then my brother TIG welded it up for me, just to give the filter a bit more clearance. It is still touching, but it's not really putting much pressure on it. So that should do the job. So I'm just going to crack on now tonight and get hopefully all the bumpers and bits and pieces on the front end, get that all back together, and then tomorrow my brother's coming round and we're going to get the gearbox fitted hopefully, so we'll have a little update once that's in the car. Alright, we're just about there. Well, just about finished all the dirty work anyway, all the grinding and welding and messing about with the tunnel. So I've just been and dropped the prop shaft off today down at Prop Tech, and they're going to make me a new front half of the prop basically. The original one was too short because the new gearbox is a bit shorter than the Toyota one, and it's got a different flange on the front. It's a larder one, and it needs like a rubber donut bush type thing on the front of that. So Martin at Prop Tech is trying to find all the bits for me to sort that out. Still waiting for the clutch to come, so the gearbox can't go back in yet, and I also need to get a new bearing, pilot bearing, to go in the flywheel for the front of the input shaft. But other than that, the tunnel's about done now really, just need to paint it. So I've just put the lever and the selector back in there just to show you. I need to seam seal up all these welds and dress it up a little bit and tidy it up, but when it's all painted the same colour again, it should look decent. I've got a bit more, I need to grind the hole a little bit more into more of an oval shape there, so when I put the rubber grommet in there, the linkage rod isn't catching on it, because I've done it on an angle. It makes it a bit more awkward. I should have left it straight really, but it does look better on an angle. So that's the new switch panel. I've notched that around the little tunnel just to mock it up how it's going to look. I need to move my ECU, which was there. It's now sat over there on that plate. I need to turn it sideways and mount it further up the tunnel so that there's room for all the wiring and fuse boxes and everything. I've welded a 3mm plate there, and there's captive nuts welded underneath to bolt that lever in, so that should do the job. I didn't do any videos while we were mounting it, but I've got a few pictures of cutting it out and making the gearbox mount and stuff, so I'll stick them in now. So there's the gearbox mount that we made. Used the original bushes, how it was mounted before, like engine mounting bushes, and that just bolts onto the back of the output shaft case in there. It's simple enough really. You cut a slot through there, so we welded that, well my brother welded that, both sides, top and bottom, so that's pretty strong now. But I've modified it now so it runs along the top of the exhaust tunnel, so the exhaust is going to run underneath now. So that should be a bit better, because the first time round the gearbox mount went under the exhaust, so we had this sort of contraption for the exhaust to fit through, which is not ideal really, so should be able to run a nice round bit of tube underneath that now. We've also mounted this little bottle on here, which is the breather for the gearbox. So I haven't finished routing the pipe yet because obviously the gearbox isn't back in the car, but I'll make sure that that runs downhill all the way to the gearbox, so if any oil does get thrown out of the breather, it'll come, even if it makes it as far as there. It's quite a long, it's about 1 metre of pipe. Even if it made it that far, it will drain back in. I've seen that on a few cars now. I think Frank Kelly's was the latest one I've seen it on, and his is mounted up on the bubble up there, but I haven't really got much room down there. And then I didn't want to put it this side above the exhaust for obvious reasons, in case it does leak any oil out and it catches fire. So put it down there out the way. Yeah, so as long as the pipe runs downhill going back to the breather, that should be fine. And the breather's at the lowest point on the gearbox as well, right down the back there, so should work anyway. So that's it for this video. It's about the best point to end really, because it's going to be a couple of weeks now before I get the clutch and the prop shaft back, so it gives me time now to seam seal up that tunnel, get it painted. Probably start looking at doing the wiring. I've got that massive nest of wires there to relocate onto that new switch panel, so that's going to take me a few evenings to sort that out. And I've got a new Polycarb window kit for the whole car. All the doors are all one-piece windows now. I've got rid of the dividers, saving a bit of weight, and I think it looks better with one piece. And the front doors, instead of the windows going up and down, there's little square sliders in those. New rear window as well. So other than that, I've got the boot lid there and the bonnet need painting, so hopefully I might get those painted this week. I think the boot lid will want primer first and then rub that down again and paint it, but the bonnet will probably just get a fresh coat of paint on the outside. Oh yeah, I've cut some vents in there as well. I've got vents across the back there to try and let heat out of the engine bay, and the same above the exhaust there, just to try and get as much heat out of the engine bay as possible. My bonnet's got the lip cut off the back as well, so it's flat there, so it does let more heat come straight out the back. I have quite a big gap to the bulkhead at the top, so yeah. So hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll have another update. The gearbox will be up and running and we can take the car out for a spin. It's booked in for mapping on the 9th of June, so got until then to get it all ready, and it gets quite busy then in June because I'm going away to the Donegal Rally in Ireland for my stag do in the middle of June. It's like the 17th or 18th of June. And then obviously the wedding, me and Moll are getting married on the 16th of July, so I've got until then really to get the car all 100%, because it's going to be the wedding car. So stay tuned and I'll give you another update as soon as I can.